I am Henry, 34 years old, and last Christmas, my own brother handed me a DNA test in front of 50 people just to prove I didn't belong. Before I tell you about the moment he ended up on his knees begging for my help, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The snow was coming down hard that night. It was one of those bitter, biting winters where the wind cuts right through your coat and settles in your bones. But as I turned my beat-up Ford F-150 into the long, winding driveway of the Sterling estate, the cold outside was nothing compared to the chill waiting for me inside. I parked my truck way back near the hedges. It looked ridiculous there, a rusted blue spot amidst a sea of luxury. There was my mother's brand new Rolls-Royce Cullinan, glistening under the floodlights like a massive diamond. And right next to it, screaming for attention, was a bright red Lamborghini Urus, Leo's car. Of course, it was red. It looked like a sleigh on steroids, parked aggressively at an angle that took up 2 spots. My wife, Sarah, squeezed my hand. She was wearing a simple green dress she'd bought on sale, and she looked more beautiful than anyone else who would be in that house. "You ready for this?" she asked, her voice soft. "As I'll ever be," I muttered. "Let's just get in. Say Merry Christmas, eat some of the food we probably can't pronounce, and get out." We walked up the stone steps. I could hear the music before the door even opened. Some jazz rendition of Jingle Bells that sounded too expensive to be festive. The butler, a man I'd known since I was a kid, but who still looked at me like I was a delivery driver, opened the heavy oak door. "Master Henry," he nodded, barely making eye contact. "Merry Christmas, Jenkins," I said. He didn't reply. The main hall was suffocating. It smelled of pine needles, expensive scotch, and old money. A 12-foot spruce tree dominated the foyer, draped in gold ribbons and crystal ornaments that probably cost more than my truck. Underneath it was a mountain of gifts. And there was Leo. My younger brother was standing by the fireplace, holding a crystal tumbler of amber liquid. He was wearing a velvet tuxedo jacket. Who wears velvet to a family dinner? Leo Sterling, that's who. He was holding court, surrounded by my mother's friends and a few business partners from the firm. He looked like the prince of the castle. I tried to slip past toward the buffet, but Leo's radar was too good. "Henry!" His voice boomed across the room. The jazz music seemed to dip just so everyone could hear him. "The prodigal carpenter returns." I'm a landscape architect, but Leo loved calling me a carpenter, a gardener, or a ditch digger depending on how much scotch he'd had. He knew it annoyed me, not because I was ashamed of my work. I built things that lasted, unlike him, but because he used it to remind everyone that I worked with my hands while he worked with minds. I forced a smile, the kind that hurts your cheeks. "Merry Christmas, Leo. Nice jacket. Very festive." He walked over, his Italian leather shoes clicking on the marble. He clapped a hand on my shoulder, heavy and condescending. "It's bespoke, Henry. But don't worry about the details. I'm just glad you could make it. We were betting on whether your truck would start in this weather." A ripple of polite, cruel laughter went through the circle of sycophants around him. My mother, Eleanor, was standing near the piano. She held a glass of champagne, looking elegant and frozen. She didn't step in. She never did. She just took a sip of her drink and looked away, adjusting her pearl necklace. "The truck runs fine, Leo," I said, keeping my voice even. "Sarah and I are just here to pay our respects." "Respects? It's a party, not a funeral." Leo laughed, but his eyes were dead serious. "Speaking of parties, everyone, gather round. I have a special announcement." My stomach tightened. Sarah gripped my arm. "Let's go," she whispered. "We don't need this." "Wait," I said. "Couldn't run. Not again." Leo stood on the raised hearth of the fireplace. He raised his glass. "As you all know, it's been a tough year since Dad passed. But under my leadership, Sterling Enterprises has had its best quarter yet." That was a lie. I knew for a fact he had leveraged 3 properties just to keep cash flow positive, but nobody here cared about balance sheets. They cared about the show. "But tonight," Leo continued, his eyes locking onto mine, "is about family and honesty. You see, growing up, Henry here always felt different. Didn't you, Henry? You liked dirt, we liked boardrooms. You liked silence, we liked the spotlight. Dad was always so hard on you, and you never understood why. The room went silent. The air felt thin. So, for Christmas? Leo reached behind the massive tree and pulled out a small, rectangular box wrapped in deep red velvet paper. I got you something to clear up the confusion, a gift of clarity. He walked over and shoved the box into my chest. I had to grab it or let it fall. Open it, Leo commanded. Leo, don't, Sarah said, stepping forward. Whatever this is, stop. It's just a gift, Sarah. Leo grinned, his teeth white and predatory. Go on, Henry. Open it. My hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from a rage I was trying desperately to bottle up. I tore the paper. Inside was a plastic box, a 23andMe DNA testing kit. I stared at it. The room seemed to spin. I've already submitted mine, Leo announced to the room, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. And I think, big brother, it's time you did too. Because let's be honest, looking at you, and then looking at the portraits of our ancestors on these walls, something doesn't add up. He leaned in close, so close I could smell the expensive scotch on his breath. He whispered, but it was loud enough for the front row to hear. Maybe this will finally prove why you've always been the glitch in the bloodline, Henry. A system error. A mistake. The glitch in the bloodline. The words hung in the air like smoke. I looked at my mother. She was studying the bubbles in her champagne glass as if the secrets of the universe were trapped in the carbonation. She knew. She had to know what he was doing, and she was letting it happen. The guests were shifting uncomfortably, but some were smirking. They loved the drama. They loved watching the high and mighty Sterlings tear each other apart, as long as the blood didn't splash on their designer clothes. I looked down at the box. This was it. The ultimate humiliation. He wasn't just calling me a disappointment. He was questioning my very existence in this family. He was erasing my history. I felt Sarah's hand on my back, a warm anchor in a freezing ocean. I slowly looked up. I didn't scream. I didn't punch him, though God knows I wanted to shatter that perfect jaw of his. Instead, I channeled every ounce of dignity I had left. Thank you, Leo, I said. My voice was calm, which I think unsettled him more than shouting would have. You're right. The truth is important, even if it destroys the people who think they control it. I tucked the box under my arm. Merry Christmas, Mother, I called out. Eleanor flinched but didn't look up. I turned around, grabbed Sarah's hand, and walked out. Behind me, I heard Leo laugh, a loud, barking sound meant to assert dominance. Don't forget to mail it in, Henry. Postage is on me. We walked out into the snow. The cold air hit my face, drying the sweat on my forehead. We got into my truck. The engine roared to life with a rattle and a cough, loud and unrefined next to the silent, sleeping luxury cars. As we drove down the driveway, leaving the lights of the mansion behind in the rearview mirror, Sarah looked at me. You're not actually going to take it, are you? She asked. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The road ahead was dark, covered in fresh, untouched snow. Oh, I'm going to take it, Sarah, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He wants to play a game of biology? He wants to talk about glitches? Fine, I'll take the test. But if he thinks the result is going to break me, he's got no idea what he just started. I didn't know it then, but that plastic tube in the velvet box was the key to unlocking a closet full of skeletons that would bury Leo Sterling alive. The weeks following Christmas were a blur of gray skies and slushy roads. January in our town is unforgiving. The holiday lights come down, the cheer evaporates, and you're left with the stark reality of a long winter. The DNA kit sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days. It looked harmless, just a piece of plastic and cardboard, but it felt radioactive. Sarah didn't touch it. She moved her coffee cup around it, wiped the counter near it, but never moved the box itself. Finally, on a Tuesday night, after a long day at a site inspection where the ground was frozen too hard to dig, I picked it up. I followed the instructions. Spit in the tube. Seal it. Shake it. A biological confession sent through the U.S. Postal Service. The waiting was the hardest part. Takes about 6 weeks to get results, and every day felt like I was holding my breath. I threw myself into my work. I was designing a memorial garden for a local hospital, a place for healing. It was ironic. I was building a sanctuary for strangers while my own home, my own history, felt like a demolition site. Leo sent texts, of course. Got the results yet? Glitch? Mom asks if you're coming for Easter. I told her not to bother setting a place. I didn't reply. I just worked. I worked until my hands were blistered and my back ached, trying to sweat out the anger. Then the email came. It was a random Thursday evening in February. Sarah was reading a book on the sofa. I was in the kitchen, scrolling through my phone, when the notification popped up. Your reports are ready. My heart hammered against my ribs. I sat down at the kitchen island. Sarah, I said. She knew immediately. She closed her book and came over, standing behind me, wrapping her arms around my neck. Do you want me to look first? No, I said. I need to see it. I clicked the link. I logged in. The wheel spun for a second. Then the colorful pie chart appeared. Ancestry composition. Genetic matches. I scrolled down to the close family section. I expected to see Eleanor Sterling. I expected to see cousins. But when I looked for the paternal match, for any link to the Sterling bloodline that dated back 4 generations in this town, nothing. I checked the comparison tool. Leo had made his data public, mostly to brag about his pure European nobility percentages on Facebook. I ran the comparison. Henry Sterling versus Leo Sterling. Shared DNA, 0%. I stared at the screen. 0. Not half-brothers. Not even distant cousins. We were strangers. I looked at the maternal side. Eleanor was there. She was my mother. But Arthur Sterling? The man who raised me? The man who taught me how to tie a tie, even if he did it with a scowl? The man whose approval I had chased my entire life? He wasn't my father. A strange feeling washed over me. I expected devastation. I expected to fall apart. But instead I felt lighter. I'm not a glitch, I whispered. What? Sarah asked, resting her chin on my shoulder. Leo called me a glitch in the bloodline, a mistake in the copy. But I'm not a mistake, Sarah. I'm just a different file entirely. I stood up and paced the kitchen. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a burning need for answers. If Arthur wasn't my father, who was? And did Arthur know? Did he spend 34 years raising another man's son, hating me for it? I need to go to the attic, I said. The attic? Sarah looked confused. Here? No. Grandma's old house. Mom hasn't sold it yet. She just uses it for storage. We drove over there at midnight. The house was cold and smelled of dust and mothballs. I had a key because I was the only one who ever checked on the pipes in the winter. We went up to the attic with flashlights. I knew my mother kept her old college things here. Eleanor Sterling was a hoarder of memories, even the dangerous ones. I dug through boxes of old clothes, yearbooks, and tax returns from the 80s. And then I found it. A leather-bound journal, tucked inside a shoebox full of old greeting cards. I opened it to the year of my conception. The handwriting was my mother's elegant looping cursive. November 14th. Arthur is gone again. Another business trip. He cares more about that company than he does about me. I feel so invisible. I flipped forward. December 20th. I met him again. Julian. He listens. He looks at me like I'm the only person in the room. I know he's Arthur's competitor. I know it's wrong. But Arthur is so cold. Julian. The name hit me like a physical blow. Julian Thorne. I knew that name. Everyone in the industry knew that name. Julian Thorne was a visionary architect and developer. He was Arthur Sterling's sworn enemy. They had fought over zoning rights, city contracts, and prestige for decades. I grabbed my phone and searched for Julian Thorne. He had died 5 years ago. I pulled up an image. The man staring back at me had my eyes. He had my jawline. He had the same way of holding his head, slightly tilted to the left. I sat on the dusty floorboards, the flashlight beam shaking in my hand. "My father is Julian Thorne," I said, my voice echoing in the empty attic. "My mother had an affair with Dad's biggest rival to get back at him for working too much." Sarah sat down beside me. "Henry, this means—" "It means Leo was right," I said bitterly. "I am a fraud. I've been walking around with the Sterling name, inheriting the Sterling work ethic, trying to please a man who probably looked at me every day and saw his enemy's face." I closed the journal. The shame Leo wanted me to feel finally hit me, not because of the DNA, but because I felt like a trespasser in my own life. Arthur Sterling must have hated me. That explained the harshness. That explained why he made me work summers at the construction sites while Leo went to tennis camp. That explained why he pushed me so hard. He was punishing me for being Julian's son. "I'm done," I told Sarah as we drove home in the silence of 3 a.m. "I'm not going to fight for the inheritance. I'm not going to fight for the company. Leo can have it. He's the real Sterling. I'm just nothing." "You are not nothing," Sarah said fiercely. "You are Henry. You are the man who built our house with his own hands. You are the man who stays up late designing gardens for sick people." "I'm resigning from the board," I said, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. "I'll sign whatever papers they want. I'll change my name if I have to. I just want out." I spent the next 2 weeks preparing to disappear. I drafted a resignation letter. I looked up properties in Oregon, far away from the Sterling drama. I was ready to ghost them all. But the universe, or maybe just the law, has a funny way of dragging you back in when you try to leave. It was a Tuesday morning in March. I was packing up my office at the firm. A small, quiet office in the basement level, far away from Leo's penthouse suite. I had a box of books in my hands when my phone rang. It wasn't Leo. It wasn't my mother. "This is Henry," I answered. "Henry, it's Vance. Mr. Vance. My father's, Arthur's, personal attorney for 40 years. A man made of granite and expensive suits. He terrified me when I was a kid, and honestly, he still scared me a little now." "Mr. Vance," I said, "if this is about the resignation, I'm sending it over today. You don't need to worry. I'm not calling about a resignation." Vance's voice was like gravel crunching under tires. "I'm calling about the reading." "The reading? Dad's will was read 6 months ago. Leo got the CO title. Mom got the house. I got the—" I paused. "The sentimental items," which turned out to be a box of old blueprints. "That was the preliminary distribution," Vance said. "There was a codicil, a secondary protocol triggered by a specific date. That date is tomorrow." "I don't understand," I said, putting the box down. "Does Leo know?" "Leo and your mother have been summoned. Attendance is mandatory, Henry. Do not make me send a car for you." "Mr. Vance, look, I know the truth," I blurted out. "I took a test. I know I'm not Arthur's son. I don't belong there. Just give whatever is left to Leo and let me go." There was a long silence on the other end. "You think Arthur didn't know?" Vance asked. His tone wasn't mocking, it was almost amused. "He knew. 9 a.m. sharp, Henry. Wear a suit. And bring your wife. You're going to need a witness." The line went dead. I stood there in my basement office, the phone still pressed to my ear. I thought I had figured out the ending of the story. I thought the tragedy was complete. I was the bastard son, the outcast, the glitch. I was supposed to fade away. But Vance's voice echoed in my head. "You think Arthur didn't know? If he knew, why didn't he kick me out 30 years ago?" My phone buzzed again. A text from Leo. "Vance says we have a meeting. Bringing your coloring books? I'm driving the new Ferrari. Try not to hit it with your truck." I looked at the text. I looked at the box of packing supplies. "Not today, Leo," I whispered to the empty room. "Not today." The morning of the meeting, the sky was a bruised purple color, threatening rain. Felt fitting. I woke up at 6 a.m., but I hadn't really slept. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying my entire childhood in my head. Every time Arthur scolded me for holding a shovel wrong. Every time he made me rewrite a report because of a single typo. Was it hate, or was it something else? Sarah was already up, ironing my navy blue suit. It was the one I wore to weddings and funerals. Today felt like a mix of both. "You don't have to do this," she said, smoothing out the collar. "We can just drive, pick a direction and go." "Vance said it was mandatory," I said, buttoning my shirt. My fingers felt numb. "Besides, if I run now, Leo wins. He gets to tell the story of how I was too coward to face the truth. He's going to be vicious, Henry. I know, but I'm immune to him now. He can't hurt me with the truth if I already accept it." I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from my mother. She never called before noon. This was panic. I finally picked up on the 4th ring while I was tying my shoes. "Henry." Her voice was breathless, high-pitched. "Henry, listen to me. You don't need to come to Vance's office." "Good morning to you too, Mother." "I'm serious," she rushed on. "I spoke to Leo. We can settle this privately. We'll cut you a check. A generous one. You can start your own firm somewhere warm. Florida? You always hated the cold. Why don't you want me there?" I asked, standing up. "Vance summoned me. Not you. He's old school. He likes drama. Listen, Henry, think about your dignity. Do you really want to sit there while they discuss your origins? It's going to be humiliating." "My origins?" I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You mean the fact that you slept with Julian Thorne?" Silence on the other end. Then a sharp intake of breath. "How did you think I wouldn't find out?" "Leo gave me the map, Mom. He handed me the shovel and I dug." "It was a mistake," she whispered. A moment of weakness. "Arthur was never there." "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't justify it to me. Just tell me one thing. Did Dad know? Please, Henry. Just stay home. I'll see you at 9. I hung up. She was scared. Eleanor Sterling was never scared. She was usually bored or disappointed, but never scared. That terrified me more than Leo's arrogance. What was she afraid of? We drove into the city. The traffic was heavy, a river of red taillights. I drummed my fingers on the steering wheel of the truck. I had washed it the night before. It didn't make it a Lamborghini, but at least the mud was gone. Vance's office was in the financial district, on the top floor of a glass needle that pierced the clouds. We took the elevator up. My ears popped. The reception area was silent and intimidating. Leather chairs, abstract art that cost more than my college tuition, and a view of the city that made people look like ants. Leo was already there. He was lounging in a chair, scrolling on his phone. He looked immaculate in a charcoal gray suit that fit him like a second skin. He wasn't alone. He had brought his own lawyer, a guy named Pritchard whom I knew by reputation. Pritchard was a shark. He specialized in hostile takeovers and crushing unions. When Leo saw me, he didn't smile. He just checked his watch, a gold Patek Philippe that used to be Arthur's. That stung. "You showed up," Leo said, not looking up from his phone. "Bold strategy. Where's Mom?" I asked. "In the powder room, fixing her face. She's been crying. Thanks for that, by the way." Leo stood up, towering over me even though we were the same height. It was all in the posture. "Let's get one thing clear before we go in there, Henry. Whatever Vance has found, some forgotten trust fund, some pity money, I'm going to contest it. You aren't getting a dime of sterling capital to fund your little garden projects." "I don't want the money, Leo." "Bullshit." Pritchard, the shark lawyer, chimed in. "Everyone wants the money, especially the ones who say they don't." The heavy double doors to the conference room opened. Vance's secretary, a woman who looked like she hadn't smiled since 1990, stepped out. "Mr. Vance is ready for you now." We filed in. The conference room was massive. A long mahogany table stretched down the center. At the head of the table sat Mr. Vance. He looked older than I remembered. His hair was completely white, his face lined with deep grooves, but his eyes were sharp, intelligent, and currently unreadable. My mother came in behind us, smelling of lavender and anxiety. She sat next to Leo, avoiding my gaze. "Sit down," Vance said. It wasn't a request. I sat on the left side. Sarah took the chair next to me. Leo and Mom sat on the right. The battle lines were drawn. "We are here to execute the final clause of Arthur Sterling's last will and testament," Vance began, opening a thick leather folder. "We did this 6 months ago," Leo interrupted, leaning back and crossing his legs. "The estate is settled. I'm CEO. Mom has the assets. Henry got his box of drawings. Why are we wasting billable hours?" Vance slowly lifted his head. He took off his reading glasses. Arthur insisted on a 6-month cooling-off period. He wanted to see how the new leadership performed. Leo scoffed. "The stock is up 4%. The stock is up because you laid off 200 workers and sold the logistics division," Vance said calmly. "But we aren't here to discuss stock prices. We are here to discuss the family." "There is no family," Leo sneered, pointing a finger across the table at me. "There's me, the heir, and there's him, the charity case. Actually, Vance, since we're all here, I have some new evidence to submit to the record." Leo slid a folder across the mahogany table. It spun and stopped perfectly in front of Vance. "DNA results," Leo announced, looking at me with triumph, "proving conclusively that Henry Sterling has zero biological claim to this estate. Under state law, any inheritance based on issue or offspring is void if the lineage is fraudulent." My mother put her hand on Leo's arm. "Leo, stop." "No, Mom. We're ending this today." Leo turned to me. "You're a fraud, Henry. You're a glitch. And glitches get deleted." I felt Sarah tense up beside me. I placed my hand over hers. I was surprisingly calm. The worst had been said. The weapon had been fired. Vance didn't even open the folder Leo slid to him. He just pushed it aside with one finger. "I am aware of Henry's parentage," Vance said. "Arthur was aware of it too." Leo froze. "What?" "Arthur knew," Vance repeated. "He knew since Henry was 2 years old. He knew about the affair. He knew about Julian Thorne." The room went deadly silent. The only sound was the hum of the HVAC system. My mother let out a small sob and covered her mouth. "If he knew," Leo stammered, his face turning red, "then why did he keep him? Why did he let him use our name?" Vance stood up. He walked over to a wall panel and pressed a button. A large screen descended from the ceiling. "Arthur didn't trust paper for this," Vance said. "He knew you would try to contest paper, Leo. He knew you would hire men like Mr. Pritchard here to twist words. So he recorded a video." Vance looked at me. For the first time, his expression softened. "Henry, you might want to brace yourself. Play it," I said. Vance dimmed the lights. The projector whirred to life. And suddenly there he was, my father, Arthur Sterling. He was sitting in this very room, wearing his favorite cardigan, looking frail but intense. The timestamp showed it was recorded on December 24th, Christmas Eve, the year before he died. The day Leo had mocked me at dinner for the first time. I watched the screen, unable to breathe. I was about to hear the voice of a dead man, and I had no idea if he was going to curse me or save me. The image on the screen flickered for a second before stabilizing. Arthur Sterling looked into the camera lens as if he were staring right through the screen and into my soul. His face was gaunt. The cancer had been eating him away by then, but his eyes were clear, cold, blue, and sharp. "This is the final testament of Arthur James Sterling." His voice filled the room, raspy but commanding. "If you are watching this, I am gone, and 6 months have passed since my death." On screen, Arthur took a sip of water. His hand shook slightly. "I am recording this on Christmas Eve. I just came from dinner." He paused, a look of disgust crossing his face. "I watched my son, Leo, humiliate his brother. I watched my wife, Eleanor, sit in silence and let it happen." In the conference room, my mother gasped. Leo shifted in his chair, his arrogance cracking. "This is manipulated," he muttered. "Deep fake." "Quiet," Vance snapped. On the screen, Arthur continued. I have spent 40 years building Sterling Enterprises. It is not just a company. It is a reputation. It stands for integrity, hard work, resilience. He leaned forward. Leo, Arthur said, felt like he was in the room. You have always believed that you are special because of your blood. You think that carrying the Sterling DNA makes you a king. But I have watched you. You are lazy. You are cruel. And you are reckless. You treat people like disposable tissues. Leo's face was turning a shade of purple I'd never seen before. And Henry, Arthur said. My heart stopped. Henry, Arthur said, his voice softening just a fraction. I know. I have always known. You are Julian Thorne's son. You have his artistic eye. You have his passion. I felt tears prickling my eyes. He knew. All those years. I was hard on you, Henry, Arthur continued. I made you work the cement mixers. I made you dig trenches in the rain. I made you earn every single dollar you ever made. I did that because I needed to know if you were like him, or if you could be like me. Arthur smiled. It was a small, rare smile. You are better than both of us. You have Julian's talent, but you have my discipline. You are the only one in this family who understands that respect is earned, not inherited. Arthur picked up a document on the desk in the video. Therefore, I am activating the moral clause of my estate. Objection! Pritchard, Leo's lawyer, shouted instinctively, forgetting he was yelling at a video recording. Arthur continued, I hereby revoke the preliminary distribution of assets. The controlling interest in Sterling Enterprises, 51% of the voting stock, is immediately transferred to a trust. Leo let out a breath of relief. A trust. Okay. A trust is managed by the bank. We can work with that. The sole trustee, Arthur said, with absolute power to hire, fire, and manage the assets, is Henry Sterling. The room exploded. No! Leo slammed his fist on the table. That's impossible. He's a bastard. He's not a Sterling. Sit down, Leo. Vance roared, his voice thundering across the room. I had never seen the old lawyer lose his temper. The video is not finished. Leo slumped back, breathing hard. My mother was weeping silently, her head in her hands. On the screen, Arthur wasn't done. Eleanor, he said, I leave you the house and a monthly stipend. However, this stipend is conditional. If you are found to be funneling money to Leo to support his gambling habits. Yes, I know about the debts. The stipend will be terminated immediately. My mother looked up, her face pale as a ghost. She looked at Leo. You told me you paid those off. And finally, Leo, Arthur said. He sighed, looking tired. I cannot cut you out completely. You are my blood. And as you love to remind everyone, blood is thick. But blood can also be toxic. I have purchased your debt, Leo, Arthur said. Leo's eyes went wide. What? The $4 million you owe to the syndicate in Vegas. The $2 million you borrowed against the company shell accounts. I paid it all off before I died. I didn't want the Sterling name dragged through the mud. Leo looked like he was going to be sick. He looked at Vance. So, I'm clear? The debt is gone. On screen, Arthur shook his head. No, you don't owe the casinos anymore. You owe the trust. You owe Henry. I sat there stunned. The numbers were staggering. $6 million? Leo was in the hole for $6 million? You will repay this debt to the trust, Arthur commanded. You will work for the company, but not as CEO. You will start where Henry started, at the bottom. If you refuse, Henry has the legal right to seize your personal assets to recover the debt. Your cars, your apartment, everything. Arthur looked at the camera one last time. Henry, my son, the blood may not be mine, but the man you became, that is my legacy. Don't let me down. The screen went black. The lights came back on. The silence in the room was heavier than concrete. Vance closed the folder. He took a single sheet of paper and slid it across the table to me. This is the acceptance form for the trusteeship, Vance said. Sign here and the company is yours. The debt is yours to collect. I picked up the pen. Felt heavy. Leo stood up. He was shaking. You can't do this. I'll sue. Pritchard. Tell him we'll sue. Pritchard was hurriedly packing his briefcase. Mr. Sterling, this is a video will, authenticated by a court officer, with a distinct moral clause and proof of debt purchase. There is no case. And frankly, if you owe $6 million to the estate, I need to ask how you plan to pay my retainer. Pritchard looked at Leo with disdain, then looked at me. Mr. Henry Sterling. Pleasure meeting you. And he walked out. Leo was alone. I looked at him. The man who had mocked me. The man who had called me a glitch. He looked small now. Henry, my mother said, her voice trembling. He's your brother. Is he? I asked calmly. According to the DNA test he gave me for Christmas, we're strangers. I looked at the paper. I signed my name. Henry Sterling. I handed it back to Vance. So, I said, turning to face Leo, let's talk about my money. The power dynamic in the room had shifted so violently I could almost feel the air pressure change. 5 minutes ago, Leo was the king. Now he was a debtor and I was the bank. Leo stared at me, his chest heaving. He looked at the door where his shark lawyer had just fled. He looked at our mother, who was uselessly wringing her hands. Finally, he looked at me. You won't do it? Leo said, trying to summon that old arrogance, but his voice cracked. You don't have the guts. You're a gardener, Henry. You plant flowers. You don't run empires. I build foundations, Leo, I said, leaning back in my chair. And I know when a structure is rotten. This one. Pointed at him. It's about to collapse. I turned to Vance. Mr. Vance, as trustee, what are my options regarding the debt recovery? Vance didn't smile, but his eyes twinkled. Immediate repayment is the standard clause. If the debtor cannot pay cash, the creditor, that's you, has the right to liquidate collateral. Collateral, I repeated, tasting the word. Like, the penthouse? Yes, Vance said. The cars? Certainly. No, Leo shouted. You can't take the Ferrari. I just got it. It was bought with company funds, Leo, I said. Dad's video made that clear. It's stolen property. I stood up. I walked slowly around the long table. Sarah watched me, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and pride. I stopped right behind Leo's chair. Here is the deal, I said softly. Leo spun his chair around to face me. He looked terrified. For the first time in his life, no one was coming to save him. I won't send you to jail, I said, though I could. Embezzlement is a felony. I could have the police waiting in the lobby in 5 minutes. Please, my mother whimpered. Henry, don't. I won't, I said, ignoring her. But you are going to pay me back. Every cent. You're going to sell the penthouse. You're going to sell the cars. And you're going to work. I'm the CEO, Leo sputtered. You're fired, I said. As of this morning. But I'm generous. I have an opening. The landscaping crew needs a grunt. Shoveling mulch. Digging irrigation trenches. Minimum wage. It'll take you about 400 years to pay off the debt. But it's a start. Leo's face twisted in disgust. I am not digging ditches. Then I call the police, I said simply. I pulled out my phone. What's it going to be? Hard labor or a hard sell? Leo looked at the phone. He looked at the window. He looked trapped. Fine, he whispered. I'll do it. There's one more thing, I said. I walked back to my seat but didn't sit down. I stood next to the screen where Arthur's face had just faded to black. Last Christmas, you made me a laughingstock. You called me a glitch. You made me feel like I should crawl into a hole and die. You did it in front of everyone. I pointed to the floor. Apologize. I'm sorry, Leo mumbled. Not good enough, I said. You wanted to bring feudalism back? You wanted to talk about bloodlines and nobility? Fine. Bow. What? Leo blinked. Bow, I commanded. On your knees. Apologize to me, and apologize to the memory of the man you stole from. I am not kneeling to you, Leo spat. Okay. I dialed 3 digits. 911. Hi. I'd like to report a grand larceny at— Wait! Leo screamed. He scrambled out of his chair. He looked wild. Stop! Don't call! Then bow! The room was silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop. Leo Sterling, the golden boy, the man in the bespoke suit, slowly bent his knees. He lowered himself to the plush carpet of the law office. He shook. Whether it was rage or shame, I didn't care. He put his hands on his knees and lowered his head. I'm sorry, he choked out. I'm sorry I stole the money. I'm sorry I mocked you. I looked down at him. I thought I would feel triumphant. I thought I would feel like a conqueror. But honestly, I just felt pity. He looked pathetic. He was a man made of money, and without it, he was nothing. Get up, I said quietly. You have a shift starting tomorrow at 6 a.m. Don't be late. Jenkins hates tardiness. Leo scrambled to his feet, dusting off his suit knees, his face burning a bright, humiliated red. He wouldn't look at me. He grabbed his phone from the table and made a move toward the door. Not so fast, I said. Leo froze. What now? I did what you wanted. Keys, I said, holding out my hand. Henry, I need to drive home, he whined. You don't have a home to drive to. The bank is seizing the penthouse tomorrow, and the car is company property. My property. I wiggled my fingers. Keys. Now. Leo reached into his pocket. He pulled out the heavy fob of the Ferrari. He slammed it into my hand. Happy? He sneered. Not really, I said. Uber is downstairs. Try the pool option. It's cheaper. Leo stormed out, slamming the heavy door behind him. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Now it was just me, Sarah, Vance, and my mother. Eleanor Sterling was sitting very still. She had stopped crying. She was calculating. I could see the gears turning in her head. She had bet on the wrong horse, and now she was trying to figure out how to switch saddles without getting trampled. Henry, she said, her voice soft, trying to summon that motherly warmth she hadn't used on me in decades. That was hard to watch, but you were strong, just like Arthur. She stood up and walked toward me, reaching out a hand to touch my arm. I know we've had our differences, she said, but now that you're in charge, we need to present a united front. The gala is next month. We can go together. I can introduce you to the board properly. I stepped back. Her hand hovered in the air, touching nothing. Differences? I asked. Mom, you watched him hand me that DNA test. You knew it was coming. You probably helped him wrap it. I was protecting you, she pleaded. I wanted you to know the truth so you could find your own path, away from this toxic environment. You wanted me gone, I corrected her. You wanted me gone because every time you looked at me, you saw your mistake. You saw Julian Thorne. That's not true, she lied. I loved Julian. Did you? I laughed. Or did you just love the attention? It doesn't matter anymore. I turned to Vance. The stipend for my mother. What were the conditions again? Vance checked his notes. If she is found to be funneling money to Leo, I haven't given him anything since the will was read, she insisted. We'll see, I said. Vance, I want a full forensic audit of her accounts. If I find one transaction, one Venmo, one wire transfer, one check that went to Leo in the last 6 months, cut her off. Eleanor's eyes went wide with genuine terror. Henry, you can't. This house. The maintenance alone is $20,000 a month. Then maybe you should downsize, I said. I hear condos in Florida are nice this time of year. I am your mother, she shrieked, the facade finally dropping. I gave you life. You gave birth to me, I said, grabbing Sarah's hand. Arthur gave me a life, and Sarah gave me a home. You just gave me a complex. Mr. Vance? I nodded to the lawyer. I'll be in touch regarding the transition. I want to meet the department heads on Monday. And Vance? Yes, Mr. Sterling? Vance smiled. He actually smiled. Thank you. We walked out of the office. The reception area was empty. Leo was gone. We took the elevator down to the garage. My old Ford truck was parked in the corner. But in the prime spot, Right near the elevator sat the Ferrari SF90 Stradale. It was sleek, silver, and looked like it was moving even when it was parked. I looked at the key in my hand. "You keeping it?" Sarah asked. I looked at the car. It was beautiful. It was a masterpiece of engineering. It was everything Leo cared about. "No," I said. "I'm going to sell it. The proceeds go to the employee pension fund Leo raided." "Good answer." Sarah smiled and kissed my cheek. "But," I grinned, tossing the key in the air and catching it, "I might take it for a spin around the block first, just to make sure the engine is sound." We got into the Ferrari. The leather smelled like victory. I pushed the start button, and the engine roared to life. A deep, guttural growl that shook the concrete walls of the garage. I pulled out onto the street. The sun had broken through the clouds. The storm was over. I wasn't a glitch. I wasn't a mistake. I was Henry Sterling, and for the first time in 34 years, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. It's been exactly 1 year since that day in the lawyer's office. 1 year since the power shifted, since the Ferrari keys landed in my palm, and since the truth about my bloodline shattered everything I thought I knew. People ask me if winning feels like crossing a finish line, like the credits rolling in a movie. I have to tell them winning isn't the end. It's just the start of the cleanup. And let me tell you, there was a lot to clean up. Taking over Sterling Enterprises wasn't just about sitting in the big chair and signing checks. It was about exorcising ghosts. The first week I walked into the CEO's office, Leo's old office. It smelled of stale cigar smoke and arrogance. The desk was made of sharkskin. I'm not kidding. Actual sharkskin. I had it hauled out and replaced with a simple oak table I designed myself. The employees were terrified of me at first. They thought I was going to be vengeful. They thought the bastard son would burn the kingdom down. Instead, I gave them raises. I took the money from selling Leo's fleet of luxury cars, the Urus, the Ferrari, the Porsche, and dumped every cent into the pension fund Leo had raided. You should have seen the faces of the guys in the warehouse when I announced that their retirement was fully funded again. That was better than any DNA match could ever be. But you're probably wondering about Leo. I didn't fire him. Firing him would have been mercy. It would have set him free to go con someone else. No, I kept him. 6 months into my tenure, on a scorching July afternoon, I drove out to one of our residential development sites. It was dusty, hot, and loud. I parked my truck. Yes, I still drive the Ford, and walked toward the trench line. And there he was, Leo Sterling, the golden boy, the man who used to wear bespoke velvet jackets. He was wearing a neon yellow safety vest stained with red clay. He was holding a shovel, standing waist-deep in a muddy ditch, laying PVC pipe for a drainage system. He looked 10 years older. He'd lost weight. The soft, pampered look was gone, replaced by sunburn and exhaustion. I stood on the edge of the trench, casting a shadow over him. He stopped digging and looked up. He wiped sweat from his forehead with a dirty glove. "You missed a spot," I said, pointing to a jagged edge in the trench wall. Leo glared at me. For a second, I saw the old flash of defiance, but it flickered out quickly. He was too tired to fight. "It's hard ground, Henry," he rasped. "Clay is like concrete today." "I know," I said. "I dug the same ground 10 years ago when Arthur sent me out here. Remember? You were in the Hamptons that summer." Leo stabbed the shovel into the earth. "Are you here to gloat? Because I have a quota to meet. The foreman says if I don't finish this section by 5, I get docked." "I'm not here to gloat," I said. I crouched down so I was eye level with him. "I'm here to give you a choice." Leo leaned on his shovel. "What choice?" "I owe the trust $6 million. At this rate, I'll be free in the year 2300. "You've been working hard," I admitted. "The foreman tells me you stopped complaining about 3 months ago. You show up on time. You don't ask for special treatment anymore." Leo looked down at his boots. "The mud doesn't care who my father was. That's what you used to say, right?" "Exactly." I stood up. "I'm moving you. Out of the ditch." Leo's eyes lit up with hope. "Back to the office?" "No," I laughed. Project manager assistant. You'll be above ground, holding a clipboard instead of a shovel. It's a $5 an hour raise. But you have to take night classes in construction management. You need to actually learn how this business works, Leo. Not just how to spend the profits. Leo looked at me, confused. Why? You hate me. I don't hate you, I said honestly. I hated who you were. But this guy, the guy sweating in a ditch trying to pay off his debts, I can work with him. I walked away before he could answer. I didn't tell him that I had also secretly started paying off the interest on his debt so he could actually make progress. He needed to learn the lesson, but I didn't need to destroy him. That's the difference between us. Then came the holidays again. Christmas this year was different. I didn't hold it at the mansion. Mother was still living there, alone, wandering the halls like a ghost in a museum. I kept my promise. I paid her bills, but I rarely visited. The air in that house was too thin for me. Instead, Sarah and I hosted a party at our place. It's a nice house, comfortable, with a big backyard. We invited the whole company. Not just the executives, but the foreman, the receptionists, the guys from the mailroom. The vibe was incredible. No jazz music, just a classic rock playlist. No champagne towers, just coolers full of beer and a taco truck parked in the driveway. Toward the end of the night, Mr. Vance showed up. He looked out of place in my living room, still wearing his three-piece suit while everyone else was in ugly sweaters. Henry, he beckoned me into the kitchen. I have something for you. No more surprises, Vance, I joked. I can't handle another video, Will. No video, he said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. It looked old. The paper was yellowed at the edges. What is this? It's from Julian Thorne, Vance said softly. The name still sent a jolt through me. My biological father. The rival. The enemy. Arthur kept this, Vance explained. Julian wrote it to you right before he died. He sent it to Arthur, asking him to give it to you when you were ready. Arthur gave it to me for safekeeping. He said, give it to the boy when he knows who he is. I took the envelope. My hands shook just like they had with the DNA test a year ago. I went out to the back porch. The snow was falling again, soft and silent. I tore open the seal. The handwriting was jagged, hurried. To Henry, if you are reading this, then Arthur has finally told you the truth. Or maybe you found out the hard way. Knowing Arthur, he probably made you work for the information. I won't waste your time with excuses. I fell in love with your mother, but I knew I couldn't have her. And when you were born, we made a deal. The hardest deal of my life. Arthur promised to raise you as a sterling. He promised to give you the discipline I lacked. In exchange, I promised to stay away. I promised not to confuse you. I watched you from afar, Henry. I saw you win the architecture prize in high school. I saw you graduate. I saw the gardens you designed. You have my hands, son. You have my need to create. But Arthur gave you the steel to make those creations last. Do not hate him for the lie. He protected you in the only way he knew how. And do not think for a second that you were a mistake. You were the only thing Arthur and I ever agreed on. We both wanted you to be better than us. Build something beautiful. Julian. I stood there in the snow, the tears freezing on my cheeks. All my life, I thought I was the result of a moment of weakness. A grudge. A glitch. But I wasn't. I was a treaty. I was the bridge between two great men who hated each other but respected the potential of a child. Sarah came out onto the porch. She didn't say anything. She just wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and leaned into me. You okay? She whispered. Yeah. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket, right next to my heart. I think I finally am. The glitch was fixed. Not by deleting it, but by understanding the code. The cemetery is quiet in the morning. I like it that way. It's located on a hill overlooking the city, and from here, I can see the skyline where Sterling Enterprises has built its legacy. I can see the parks I designed. I can see the world moving on. I stood in front of two graves. They aren't next to each other, that would be too much to ask of the universe, but they are in the same section. Arthur Sterling's headstone is massive, gray granite, imposing and solid, just like him. Julian Thorne's headstone is sleek, black marble, artistic and modern, just like him. I placed a white rose on Julian's grave, a nod to the blood, to the creativity, to the biological spark that made me. Then I walked over to Arthur's grave. I placed a set of blueprints on the grass. It was the design for the new community center we were breaking ground on next week. It was affordable, sustainable, and built to last 100 years. I hope you like it, I said to the stone. Leo helped with the drainage specs. He's actually getting pretty good at it. He stopped wearing Italian loafers to the job site, so that's progress. The wind blew through the trees, a soft rustling sound that felt like a conversation. Standing there between my two fathers, I realized the full weight of the journey. A year ago, I was ready to run away. I was ready to let a piece of paper define me. I was ready to let a small-minded bully like Leo tell me who I was. But family isn't a single line on a graph. It isn't a percentage on a website. Family is the people who show up. It's Arthur, who chose to raise a boy who wasn't his because he saw potential. It's Sarah, who held my hand when I was invisible. It's even Leo, in his own twisted way, pushing me until I finally snapped and stood up for myself. I walked back to my truck. The Ford F-150 was parked on the gravel path. It was getting old, the odometer ticking past 200,000 miles. I could afford a new one now. I could afford a fleet of them. But I kept it. It reminded me of where I came from. It reminded me that you don't trade in loyalty just because you have a better option. I climbed in and started the engine. It rumbled to life, steady and reliable. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Leo. Hey boss, the concrete pour for the foundation is scheduled for noon. You coming to inspect? I smiled. On my way. Don't let it set before I get there. I put the truck in gear and drove down the hill, leaving the dead to rest and heading back to the living, where there was work to be done. I had a company to run, a brother to rehabilitate, and a legacy to build. My own legacy. I am Henry Sterling. I am the son of a visionary and a titan. And I am no longer a glitch. I am the upgrade. Thank you for walking this road with me. It wasn't an easy story to tell, but it's one I needed to share. If there is one thing I want you to take away from my life, it's this. Your value is not written in your DNA. We live in a world obsessed with labels, with status, with who your parents are. We see people like Leo born on third base thinking they hit a triple and we feel small. We feel like we don't belong because we don't have the right last name or the right inheritance. But the truth? The only inheritance that matters is your character. Integrity is a currency that never devalues. Hard work is an investment that always pays compound interest. When the storm comes, and it always comes, the fancy cars and the big titles won't save you. What saves you is the strength you built when no one was watching. Arthur Sterling taught me that. He taught me that being a father isn't about biology. It's about showing up. It's about teaching the hard lessons. And in the end, the glitch that Leo mocked was actually my greatest strength. Because I had to fight for my place in the world, I knew exactly what it was worth. So look at your own life. Are you letting someone else define you? Are you letting a label hold you back? Tear it up. Write your own definition. I want to hear from you. What is the one quality you value most in a person? Is it their loyalty, their resilience, or their honesty? Or, if this story resonated with you and you believe that family is about love, not just blood, just comment the word good below. Seeing that one word tells me that we are on the same page and that true values still matter in this world. I'm Henry Sterling. Thanks for listening. Now go build something real.